Sometimes it wore a friendly smile or a coat just like everyone else. Arriving at a small, secure cafe he frequented for work, Marcus sat in a corner booth, laptop open, eyes flicking to the street outside through the rain-streaked windows. He pulled up records on recent police misconduct in the area, reviewing files of officers involved in racially motivated stops. The officers from the previous night were not unknown to him. Complaints and lawsuits lined the files. But these were small victories in a city where systemic bias ran deep. As he sipped his coffee, he noticed a figure in a dark hoodie linger across the street, partially hidden by the awning of a bookstore. Marcus's fingers twitched toward his coat pocket. The man seemed familiar, but Marcus couldn't place him immediately. The man raised his hand slightly, not in greeting but in acknowledgement. A glimmer of metallic reflection caught Marcus's eye. It wasn't a weapon. It looked like a phone or perhaps a recording device. His pulse quickened. The shadowed figure had returned. Marcus stepped outside, keeping the cafe between him and the street. "I know you're watching me," he called, keeping his tone controlled but firm. "If you want something, speak now. Don't hide in the shadows." The figure emerged, stepping into the light. For the first time, Marcus could see him clearly. A man in his early 40s, sharp features, close-cropped hair, wearing a leather jacket. There was an intensity in his eyes, a measured calculation that made Marcus instinctively cautious. "You've handled yourself well, Reed," the man said, his voice calm but unmistakably threatening. "But courage can only take you so far. The officers last night were just a taste. What's coming next is far more complex." Marcus's brow furrowed. "Who are you? What do you want?" The man smiled faintly, almost as if amused by the question. "I am someone who sees the world differently. I've watched you for a long time. Your ability to navigate dangerous situations, it's remarkable. But there are forces at play that even someone like you can't control. You need allies, or you need luck. And right now, luck is not on your side." Marcus's instincts screamed caution. "If you're here to threaten me, you failed. I've survived far worse than a warning in the rain." The man's eyes narrowed. "Oh, I'm not here to threaten you, not exactly. Think of me as a mirror. I show you what's really happening behind the facades everyone wears. The officers you faced, they were just one part of a larger machine, a system built to enforce fear, bias, and control. And because of who you are, Marcus, they see you as a problem, not a person, not a man doing his duty, just a target." Marcus felt a chill. The man wasn't exaggerating. He had experienced this firsthand, the assumption of guilt based solely on the color of his skin. But this figure, he was operating on a different level. Someone who understood not just individual prejudice, but systemic intent. "You're saying all this, and you're not the enemy?" Marcus asked cautiously. "Not entirely," the man replied. "I'm a facilitator. I expose truths. Sometimes people like you need to be tested, pushed, and shown who's really moving the strings behind the scenes. Tonight, that test continues. But first," he reached into his pocket and produced a small envelope, sliding it across a nearby bench. "This is for you. Open it when you're alone. It will explain more than I can say right now." Marcus eyed the envelope warily but retrieved it. "And what if I don't trust you?" "You already do," the man said, stepping back into the shadows. "You're standing here listening, trying to assess the risk. That's trust of a kind." And with that, he vanished, leaving Marcus alone with the envelope, the city buzzing quietly around him. Back in his apartment, Marcus finally opened the envelope. Inside were several documents and photographs, files on high-profile officers known for racially motivated stops, internal memos suggesting cover-ups, and photos of individuals Marcus didn't recognize. Watching, always watching. But one photo made his blood run cold. It was of the officers from the night before, standing in the rain, looking directly at him, and in the background, the shadowed figure from the street, observing everything. Marcus's mind raced. Whoever this person was, they had orchestrated more than a random warning. They had been controlling, guiding, and manipulating events, allowing him to survive the officer's aggression while sending a message. a message that he was now part of something far larger and far more dangerous. As he studied the files, a knock on the door startled him. He froze, glancing at the peephole. No one was there, but a small package had been slipped under the door, a sleek black case unmarked with no return address. Inside, he found a state-of-the-art body camera, fully charged, and a note. Use this wisely. Evidence is everything. You cannot fight blind. Marcus's pulse quickened. This was no ordinary observer. This was someone setting him up, preparing him, challenging him to navigate a world where corruption, prejudice, and power intersected dangerously. He activated the camera and tested it. Everything functioned perfectly. He realized this wasn't just about self-defense. It was about exposing the system, revealing the truth that so many tried to hide. And he knew that the officers from the night before were only the beginning. The next days were tense. Marcus moved cautiously through the city, documenting incidents, observing patterns, connecting dots between racially motivated stops and cover-ups. Every interaction felt like a test. Every glance from a passerby seemed potentially threatening. He began to see the threads of a larger conspiracy, one that intertwined bias, power, and institutional corruption. Then late one evening, as he reviewed footage from a nearby intersection, he noticed movement in the distance. A black SUV moving slowly through the streets, lights dimmed. His heart sank. He had seen this vehicle before, months ago, during an undercover operation in another city. Its occupants were skilled, methodical, and ruthless. He grabbed his coat and stepped outside, rain beginning to fall again, the city now cloaked in a familiar chill. Marcus knew he was being watched. The SUV slowed as he approached, then stopped at the corner. He could see two figures inside, their faces obscured by shadows. He felt the weight of the night pressing down. Before he could react, a third figure emerged from the sidewalk, moving quickly toward him. Marcus recognized the stance, the gait, the confidence. His instincts screamed danger. The figure stopped a few feet away, raising their hand. It was the shadowed man from the previous day. "You've done well, Marcus," he said calmly, "but it's time to step up. There are players in this city who don't care about your badge, your authority, or your skin color. And they won't hesitate to strike first." Marcus squared his shoulders, gripping the body camera. "Then let them come," he said, voice steady. "I'm ready for whatever's next." The shadowed man nodded, then pointed toward the black SUV. "That's your first real test. And Marcus, you won't be alone in this fight, but the question is, will you survive it?" Marcus's eyes narrowed as the SUV's engine hummed low, tires crunching on wet asphalt. The rain blurred the neon reflections across the street. He knew that the next hours would define everything, the line between survival, justice, and exposure of corruption. And then, as the shadowed man stepped back into the night, disappearing completely, the black SUV accelerated slowly toward Marcus, its intentions unmistakable. He took a deep breath, tightening his grip on the camera. The city felt alive, almost breathing, ready to challenge him at every turn. Marcus knew that the game had just begun, and that the officers from the night before were only the opening act in a much larger, far more dangerous theater. The rain began falling harder, masking the sounds of the SUV as it moved closer. Marcus's pulse raced. One misstep, one wrong move, and the consequences could be fatal. The city felt different that morning. The rain had cleared, leaving slick streets that reflected the early sunlight like mirrors. Marcus Reed walked briskly through the downtown blocks, body camera recording in hand, heart still pounding from the events of the previous night. The black SUV, the shadowed figure, and the hidden network of officers, everything was now connected. And Marcus knew the final confrontation was inevitable. He stopped at a quiet intersection, scanning the street. His laptop, packed with evidence of racially motivated stops, internal memos, and covert recordings of abusive officers, rested in a secure backpack. The files could destroy careers, expose corruption, and reveal the truth of systemic prejudice that had fueled so many injustices. But exposing it would come at a risk. His life could be on the line. As he moved, he noticed the familiar black SUV lurking at a distance. Its presence was deliberate, calculated, a silent reminder that Marcus was being watched. This was no longer about survival. This was about justice. He approached the front steps of a nondescript building, a place where many of the city's off-the-books meetings took place. The shadowed man from the previous night emerged from the doorway, his coat dripping from the morning drizzle. "Marcus," he said, voice low and controlled, "today you see the full picture. Everything you've witnessed, every threat, every unjust stop, it all leads here." Marcus tightened his grip on the body camera. "I've seen enough to know what this city's hiding, but I need proof. I need to show everyone what's happening." The man nodded. "Then follow me, but be careful. The officers you confronted, they're just the beginning. You're about to see the force behind the force, the ones pulling the strings behind the badge." Inside the building, Marcus followed through a labyrinth of hallways until they reached a private room filled with monitors, documents, and stacks of folders. Everything from internal police complaints to surveillance logs. The room had the quiet hum of electronics and the faint scent of old paper, a sanctuary of hidden truths. On one monitor, Marcus saw footage from the previous night. The officers who had attempted to detain him were highlighted in red boxes, their actions scrutinized frame by frame. Each hesitation, each aggressive gesture, each microaggression that had escalated into potential brutality was captured. The room made it painfully clear. These men had acted with implicit bias, targeting him because of his skin color, assuming guilt without evidence. Then the shadowed man handed Marcus a tablet. "These are live feeds. Every officer in the city isn't on patrol for justice. Some are part of a network ensuring their own protection, hiding misconduct, and silencing anyone who exposes them. You're seeing the reality they want hidden." Marcus's stomach tightened. He had suspected corruption, but seeing it laid bare, watching officers he had once considered neutral, now revealed as participants in systemic abuse, it was staggering. "Why show me this?" Marcus asked. "Because," the man said, "you are the one who can expose it. You survived their assumptions, their harassment, their violence. And now, with evidence, you can make sure others don't fall victim the way you almost did." Marcus took a deep breath and scanned the room. One monitor flickered, and a live feed showed the very officers who had stopped him, entering a downtown precinct, oblivious to the scrutiny that now awaited them. The moment felt surreal. Men who had wielded power with prejudice were now unknowingly under watch, their arrogance captured for posterity. But Marcus also saw something more chilling, a higher-level figure, someone orchestrating the network. This person wasn't a street-level officer. They were someone who understood how to manipulate bias, how to enforce it through systems, ensuring that individuals like Marcus remained targets. The realization sent a shiver down his spine. "This is it," the shadowed man said. "They think they're untouchable, but today you expose them." Marcus nodded. He knew he had to be smart. Recklessness could get him killed. Every move had to be calculated, precise. He began uploading footage to secure cloud servers, encrypting files, and preparing a press release for trusted journalists. The evidence had to be undeniable, presented without room for dismissal or cover-up. Hours passed. The sun climbed higher and the tension in Marcus's chest grew. He sensed movement outside the building. Then suddenly, the black SUV returned, pulling up to the front entrance. The officers who had tried to stop him emerged, but this time, they were aware they were being watched. Their expressions shifted from confidence to confusion as Marcus stepped into the light, body camera streaming live to multiple outlets. "Marcus Reed," one of them called, recognition and panic in his voice. "You can't." Marcus held up his badge wallet, opening it for all to see. "I can, and I will." The live feed captured everything. Every officer's hesitation, every stammered denial, every attempt to regain control. Marcus spoke clearly, articulating what had occurred, detailing each act of racial profiling, harassment, and attempted detention. His voice echoed across the streets and into the monitors of those watching online. The shadowed man handed Marcus a folder. "Everything you need to finish this," he said. Inside were financial records, internal emails, and surveillance showing attempts to intimidate and silence witnesses. The network was extensive, and Marcus realized he now held undeniable proof of systemic corruption. "Why help me?" Marcus asked quietly, looking at the shadowed man. "Because some people are meant to reveal the truth," he replied. "Sometimes karma isn't a single event. Sometimes it's a chain reaction, and you've already survived the first links." Suddenly, one of the officers lunged toward Marcus, desperate, a handgun drawn. But before they could reach him, security doors slammed shut, locking automatically, cutting off the corridor. Marcus realized that the shadowed man had anticipated this move, preemptively securing their position. Marcus's pulse raced. He knew the stakes. Any misstep could be fatal. He raised his hands, keeping the live feed running, forcing the officers to consider their every move. They were trapped, exposed, their authority now meaningless under public scrutiny. One officer finally spoke, voice trembling. We didn't know he was." "You assumed because of my skin color," Marcus interrupted sharply. "You assumed guilt, assumed threat, and almost cost me my life. All because of your bias. All because of the system protecting men like you from accountability." The shadowed man stepped forward, revealing himself fully. "And that's why the chain ends here. No one manipulates the truth without consequence." Marcus uploaded the last of the files. Every journalist, every news outlet, every social media platform within reach received copies, secure and verified. The narrative was now uncontested. The officers' misconduct, the racial targeting, and the cover-up network were all laid bare. Then in the corner of the room, a final monitor lit up. It showed a figure Marcus had not seen before, an individual observing the live stream, someone powerful, someone capable of pulling strings even higher than the network Marcus had exposed. A chill ran down his spine. The figure leaned back in their chair, a smirk forming. Marcus recognized the influence immediately. A city official, someone untouchable, or so they thought. The final layer of the conspiracy remained hidden, and the man's gaze implied a challenge. The fight was not over. Marcus clenched his fists, determination hardening in his chest. He had survived racial profiling, exposure, and intimidation. He had revealed corruption, but now he understood the true game. Power could always find a way to strike back. The shadowed man placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder. "You've done what few could, but the system will test you again. The question now is, will the truth be enough to survive the next move?" Marcus looked at the monitors, at the officers, at the unseen figure in the shadows. He knew this moment would define not just his career, but the lives of countless others affected by systemic bias and police misconduct. The door to the building suddenly rattled, a heavy hand trying to push it open. Outside, Marcus could hear the rumble of multiple vehicles approaching. The final confrontation was coming, and this time there would be no shadows to hide behind. Marcus adjusted the camera, took a deep breath, and prepared to face the unknown. He knew that the fight for justice was far from over. The city had seen his courage, the evidence was undeniable, and the officers had been exposed. But the larger network, the power behind the badge, remained a looming threat. He whispered to himself, a promise and a warning. "I survived the assumptions, I survived the prejudice. Now I will survive the system itself." As the first figures forced their way into the building, Marcus pressed record, ready to confront the full scale of corruption. The sun glinted off the wet pavement outside, and in that reflection, he saw the moment of reckoning approaching. A storm more powerful than any rain, more intense than any confrontation he had faced before. The city was restless that evening. The rain had returned, drumming against the streets like a relentless heartbeat. Marcus Reed stood at the corner of 7th Avenue, his breath visible in the cold air, mind racing with everything that had happened over the past week. Officers who had attempted to detain him were exposed, internal investigations were underway, and the network of corrupt enforcement officials was unraveling. Yet, Marcus knew the battle wasn't over. The shadowed man, the one who had guided him through the labyrinth of corruption, was nowhere to be seen. Marcus trusted him, but even as an FBI agent, he had learned the hard way that allies could be temporary and enemies could be disguised as friends. He felt the weight of every step he had taken, every truth he had revealed, and every life that had been impacted by the systemic injustice he was now exposing. As he walked, he noticed a small crowd gathered near a luxury high-rise building downtown. Phones were raised, capturing something on live streams, and murmurs filled the air. Marcus approached cautiously. The crowd parted slightly when they recognized him, whispers of gratitude and awe spreading. They knew he was the man who had dared to challenge the system. Then he saw them, the officers who had stopped him. They were being escorted by internal affairs investigators, their hands cuffed behind their backs. Their confidence was gone, replaced by panic and disbelief. The same men who had tried to intimidate him now faced consequences. Their arrogance had crumbled in the face of undeniable evidence. Marcus felt a sense of vindication, but he didn't allow himself to celebrate yet. He had learned through every confrontation that victory could be fleeting. The higher-ups, the city officials who had orchestrated or turned a blind eye to misconduct, were still out there. The shadowed man had warned him. The network extended far beyond the precincts. Inside the building, Marcus met with the lead investigators. They were diligent, professional, and visibly shaken by the depth of corruption Marcus had uncovered. Files were examined, statements were verified, and the chain of command within the corrupt network began to unravel. Marcus guided them through every recording, every internal memo, every instance of racial profiling that he had documented. Hours passed. Marcus felt fatigue in his bones, but he remained vigilant. He couldn't allow even a single detail to slip through the cracks. As dawn approached, the investigators called a brief recess, allowing Marcus to step outside and breathe in the cold, wet air. The city skyline glimmered in the morning light, reflecting off the rain-slicked streets. It was a moment of quiet, a pause before the final reckoning. Then, unexpectedly, Marcus received a message on a secure line. The shadowed man's voice was calm but urgent. "They know you're here. They've realized the network is compromised and they're making moves. You need to be careful. There's someone high up who will try to reclaim control." Marcus clenched his fists. He had anticipated this. Exposure was one thing, but those who wielded power with prejudice and cruelty would fight back. He steeled himself for what was coming. By midday, the final confrontation began. The shadowed man had coordinated with trusted law enforcement allies, ensuring that the higher-level officials attempting to manipulate the investigation were trapped. The lobby of the building became a controlled scene. Journalists, investigators, and a select security team positioned strategically. Suddenly, the doors burst open. The city official who had been monitoring Marcus's live feed, the one responsible for orchestrating the systemic cover-ups, stepped into the lobby. His face was a mask of controlled fury, eyes scanning the room, realizing his influence was collapsing. Marcus didn't flinch. He stepped forward, badge wallet in hand, showing the official and everyone present the authority he had to demand accountability. "It ends here," Marcus said, voice steady. "Every action, every cover-up, every unjust stop you've orchestrated will now be exposed to the public. You will answer for your actions." The official's assistant attempted to shield him, but investigators stepped forward, reading the rights and confirming the arrest. The magnitude of the moment was clear. The city's most corrupt official was being held accountable for systemic racism, abuse of power, and obstruction of justice. Outside, the rain began to fall harder. It was as though the storm itself was cleansing the streets, washing away years of unchecked bias and corruption. Marcus looked at the crowd, seeing the faces of ordinary citizens who had endured harassment, profiling, and injustice. Their relief and hope were palpable. For once, they felt the power of truth prevailing. But Marcus's work was not yet complete. There were settlements to arrange, policies to revise, and officers to retrain. He worked alongside investigators, journalists, and community leaders, ensuring the story would not be forgotten, that reforms would take hold, and that justice would reach beyond the individuals exposed. Days turned into weeks. Marcus found himself returning to the spots where he had once been harassed, documenting, speaking with communities, and ensuring that lessons from his experience were not ignored. The officers who had attempted to detain him were suspended, facing charges, and the city began implementing stricter oversight protocols to prevent racial profiling. Then came the moment that brought everything full circle. Marcus walked past the same precinct where he had first been stopped. Officers now regarded him with a mix of respect and unease. The same men who had tried to intimidate him no longer held the power they once believed they possessed. Their badges were symbols of accountability, not fear. He paused at the entrance, reflecting on the journey. From the rainy streets where he had first been accused to the hidden networks of corruption, to the final exposure of city officials, Marcus had survived prejudice, brutality, and systemic injustice. Karma, he realized, wasn't a simple act. It was persistence, courage, and the refusal to allow bias to go unchecked. As he walked away, the city behind him glinting in the rain, he received one last message from the shadowed man. You did what few could, Marcus. You survived the system, but remember, truth is a living thing. Always be vigilant. Marcus smiled faintly. He knew the fight for justice never truly ended. But in that moment, he had restored hope, held accountability to the powerful, and proven that courage, truth, and perseverance could overcome even the most entrenched systems of oppression. The rain eased, sunlight breaking through the clouds, and Marcus continued down the street, not just as an agent of the law, but as a symbol of resilience, justice, and the unwavering fight against racism and abuse of power.